So, folks, there's this man named Ben Shapiro, and he has a team full of youthful Zoomer editors these days. And these days, his content is really giving "How do you do, fellow kids?" energy, you know. And I think that's really apparent because he's revisiting today a clip from his appearance on Piers Morgan in 2013, and that's I checked the math 12 years ago. And boy howdy, it's a real blast from the past. So let's take a look at how this plays out.
Alrighty, folks, today we are going to revisit one of the first viral debates of my career, my 2013 showdown with Piers Morgan on CNN, where we clashed over gun control in the wake of the Sandy Hook tragedy. I want to dissect what worked in that debate, what didn't, what we can...
What worked in that debate and what didn't? Was the part that didn't work the fact that you were arguing that we need more guns to stop school shootings after a bunch of kids got massacred, and now we just have school shootings all the time, and more guns apparently did not solve the problem? That's so strange. It's weird that with 12 years of more guns, the school shootings have not stopped.
And the hall learn from it. From the heated accusations of emotional manipulation to the sharp exchanges on policy, this debate encapsulated the complexities of discussing things like gun rights in America. So let's dive in, see how the arguments hold up today, what insights we can gain from this pivotal moment in public discourse. But first, of course, this video is sponsored by our friends at PDS. So after the Sandy Hook shootings in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, in which 20 kids and 6 adults were killed, and then the shooter shot himself and killed himself, there's a lot.
Can I just say there's something like really freakish about the way that he intones, like the way his voice just like says like 27 kids got killed. Like that's weird to me, right? Like, how do you say that without any kind of reaction? You know, like,
which 20 kids and 6 adults were killed, and the shooter shot himself and killed himself. There's a lot of debate in the United
20 kids and 6 adults, and the shooter killed himself. Like you don't give a shit, man, that children were gunned down.
States over gun control, because of course this was during the Obama administration. President Obama immediately came out in favor of a wide variety of gun control measures, and one of the loudest voices at the time was Piers Morgan. At the time, Piers had a show on CNN, and pretty much every night he would go on the air and he would make the argument that if you didn't believe in his version of gun control, that meant that you didn't care about the kids who'd been murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary.
How many more kids have to die before you guys say, look, we want less guns, not more?
Oh no. A rare Piers Morgan W. And also the answer was an infinite number of children, apparently.
This irritated me, and so I wrote a column about Piers Morgan and emotional manipulation. He saw that, and he invited me on his program. I was on the program, I believe, the night after Alex Jones. He'd been having on sort of a spate of people who are right of center to discuss this issue. Alex, of course, is a rather robust personality, to put it mildly. And so Alex
I'm not
sort of
built to suck your dick.
Splurged all over him, just kind of yelled at him and screamed at him. And basically, Piers was very happy with that because it was rating his gold. And also, he looked like the rational and reasonable one while Alex Jones was yelling at him. And so he booked me, presumably hoping that there would be a sort of similar face-off. And it did not go quite the way I think that Piers probably planned it.
Honestly, Piers, you've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch
God, he's such a little nerd.
Your show, and I've seen it repeatedly. What you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies.
Holy shit, dog.
Why commit to gun control when Yahweh commands you to commit to * control?
People are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
Sakit the Nuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. Also, like, you realize that the reason Piers Morgan is able to advocate for gun control on the graves of dead kids is because kids keep getting shot by guns. that people are able to get too easily. You know, like, this has been a problem all of my life at this point, and more guns every single time are in public circulation, and weirdly enough, it has not seemed to stop any of these mass shootings at schools. It seems, in fact, to have led to more shootings happening in schools, actually, which is crazy.
But I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
I mean, let's be clear here. By bringing up the visual of graves of dead kids here, Ben Shapiro is in fact the one standing on the graves of dead kids in order to defend the sales of guns, in order to make, you know, the gun industry sales go up.
Like I say, how dare you?
Well, I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly.
So, number one, I was so young and so innocent and had such a...
Just also, 26 children, 20 children died. Sorry. 20 elementary school children.
bad haircut. But the thing that I was doing here is a debate tactic that I think is quite useful, which is I was taking the central emotional contention off the table by pointing out that that was going to be Piers' chief tactic, that he was going to accuse me of not caring enough if I disagreed with him on the policy. It meant that Piers could no longer do it, because if he did it, I would just say, Piers, you're doing it again. This is a thing that you do. And Piers' only response being, how dare you? Obviously, this made this debate very viral, because him being offended at the accusation that he was using emotionality as a substitute for reason, and then him saying, how dare you, was actually evidence that...
Again, I love that Ben here is positioning his argument that, like, we need more guns to keep children in school safe as the reasonable argument to make, when, like, we have an additional 12 years of evidence showing that more guns did not make these schools more safe, in fact. Like, that's not... that kind of shows that you aren't coming at this from a place of logic and reason, especially when we can now look at incidents like Uvalde, where not only do you have, like, hundreds of armed law enforcement officers responding, but you have just kids being massacred while while these armed law enforcers are just loitering outside. Like, you can't make this argument that more guns is making us safer. It's just patently not true by the evidence on the ground. At least not safer from these mass shooting events.
That he was doing precisely the thing that I was accusing him of doing. Piers and I are not pretty friendly, and I'm sure he has a different perspective on this debate, but he was pretty upset from the outset of the interview, and he got more upset as the interview went on. At some point during the debate, we started talking about assault rifles. And assault rifles, of course, are not real category because they have no specific definition. There's no rifle called an assault rifle. And that's not what AR stands for. AR is Armalite. The thing that was being pushed by the Obama administration at the time was their kind of old standby on gun control, which is get rid of the assault rifles, that the rifles are the real problem. And the point that I was making in this debate is I was pointing out to Piers, if you want to stop shootings with guns, if you want to stop killings with guns, why are you focusing on the tool that is not used nearly as often? Why are you focusing on assault rifles as opposed to handguns? If you really wanted to.
Like, I like that Ben here, just real quick, is saying, like, oh, well, assault rifle or assault weapons aren't like a real category. And it's like, they are. We made them a real category in 1994. When we passed the federal assault weapons ban. Like, that's we made it a category in federal law. Now, you can say, well, we that law expired, decades ago, but like we could just like renew that law, actually. So the argument here is bad.
To do the thing, you would just ban all the guns. And this is the thing I wanted Piers to just say out loud, because clearly what he wanted was a full-scale gun ban in the United States, and he wasn't willing to say.
Oh, that's interesting that you're putting words into Piers Morgan's mouth here, when, like, that's not what Piers Morgan has said. or at least that's not what he said in that debate. It's super interesting of you to do that.
So I was pushing him on it.
My question remains for you, Piers, and I'm still waiting for an answer from the left on this. They say they're pro-Second Amendment. Why don't you want to ban handguns? If you really want to solve the quote-unquote gun violence problem in America, go after all the guns. Why just stop yourself at assault rifles?
Because I believe and respect an American's right under the Second Amendment of the Constitution that you kindly brought in to defend themselves with a handgun or a pistol. What I don't understand...
But most of the murders are committed with those weapons.
What I don't... Well, as we just established, because I talked you through them, the last 4 mass shootings in America...
Adam Lanza had 2 pistols on him.
Well,
he didn't just have an assault rifle. If he hadn't had the assault rifle...
He didn't use them, as you know.
And if he hadn't had the assault rifle, he wouldn't have used them?
So again, Piers had boxed himself in here because the reality is, and the left does this all the time on the assault rifle argument, they'll use mass shootings as a proxy for all shootings, and that is a bad statistical proxy. The point that...
Well, wait a minute. Like, when we're talking about the specific issue of mass shootings in schools, most mass shootings are done with, like, assault weapons or weapons that would be classified under the assault weapons ban as assault weapons. You know, the AR-15 is one of those. And so, like, when you're saying, like, oh, why don't you want to ban all of them? Because we're talking about one very specific problem. And if you want to talk about those other problems, that's totally fine. But, like, if we're talking about this particular debate, you're talking about the massacring of children. And we're 12 years on now, and these types of weapons are the most common weapons used in mass shootings. Now, you can point out that a lot of mass shooters have handguns or pistols or whatever, but they're mostly using the assault weapons. Part of what plays a role in their calculation of to do this type of violence is the fact that they have access to an assault weapon that allows them to kill a lot more people than a handgun would. Wouldn't a school shooting be a lot less deadly if the only weapon the shooter had was a pistol? Yes.
that I'm making is clearly a logical one, which is if you want to stop shootings, period, why not focus on the tool that is...
I did a great technique called the Mott and Bailey. Exactly.
Most often used if the tool is really the problem. And the reason that Pierce doesn't want to say, I want to ban all the handguns, a position, by the way, that he actually eventually came to. The reason he doesn't say it is because he knows that that's a complete non-starter in American politics. And as you'll see, eventually he ends up very angry at the Constitution itself. So finally, we get to the heart of the argument, which is the Second Amendment. And this is the thing that I've been trying to get Pierce to say. I want Pierce to just be honest in this interview and say he doesn't like the Second Amendment and he wants guns banned. Because once he establishes that, now we can have an actual honest conversation about whether that should happen or not in the United States of America. And Pierce has been resisting so far throughout the interview. He won't give in. And finally, he kind of does. We'll get to more on this in a moment. First, folks, creditors profit from your debt. They benefit when you are trapped in high interest payments. They want you drowning in student loans, medical debt, credit card debt, expensive mortgages, because financial strain makes you easier to control. It's time to take back control and to fight back, and that is where PDS Debt comes in. PDS Debt understands that your financial situation is in fact unique. They look beyond just numbers to create a personalized plan specifically for you. There's no minimum credit score required to get help. Their goal is to help you save more, pay off debt faster, and put money back where it belongs, in your pocket. Their reputation speaks for
Save your hearts, you're gonna have to provide some kind of citation for that. Because as far as I know, there are a lot of different classifications of mass shootings, so you're gonna have to be more specific.
For itself. PDS Debt maintains an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, hundreds of 5-star Google reviews, and a perfect 5-star rating on Trustpilot. They've successfully helped tens of thousands of people break free from debt and regain their financial independence. I have friends who have fallen into debt. It is brutal. It can absolutely wreck your life.
Smith.
PDS Debt can help you solve that problem. You are 30 seconds away from being debt-free.
Man, it's crazy to me always how smoothly Ben's videos go into the ad reads. You know, he's talking about debating about how people should have more tools to kill kids, and then he transitions into how you can pay back your loans. It's crazy.
Get your free assessment and find the best option for you right now at pdsdebt.com/Shapiro. Instead of living the rest of your life behind this dead 8-ball, go get it solved. pdsdebt.com/Shapiro. That's pdsdebt.com/Shapiro.
You come in, you brandish your little book as if I don't know what's
My little
in
book,
there.
that's the Constitution of the United States, our founding document.
I know
Piers.
what's in your Constitution.
Do you really?
I've been debating this for a very long time.
Then you should read the Second Amendment again.
I know the Second Amendment.
And I'm also pro Second Amendment. But I do think that like it'd be great to live in a world where we can just melt all like weapons into slag and make them into art. You know, I think we should work towards that. But I think it's pretty obvious from like the number of mass shootings and the uptick of mass shootings that there's a correlation between the number of guns in circulation and the number of mass shootings that happen in this country. And we should do something about that. So, Save Your Hearts, your quotation is at least 18 shot, 4 fatally, and weakened gun violence across Chicago. What do you think that proves? Like, it's every weekend. Are you complaining that the news agency isn't calling that act of like gun violence a mass shooting? Because I'm just going to go off of what I can tell from what you yourself brought here, is that 18 shot, 4 fatally in weekend gun violence is spread across multiple incidences with different groups of people and different folks involved. It's not in one day, one person going and shooting 18 people and killing 4 of them. Right? Like, because that gun violence is bad, but a mass shooting is something different. A mass shooting is generally considered 4 or more victims shot at a single event. And that sounds like a roundup of multiple events, some of which might be mass shootings that occurred over the course of a weekend. So, like, if you're trying to say, like, oh, it's being underreported, what you provided is not evidence of it being underreported. What you're providing is a news headline. And when we're talking about underreporting, we're not talking about that.
Conservatives on guns. Let them bloviate until they make the "cars can kill people too" argument. Then run down all the hoops involved with getting a driver's license.
True. Thank you for the $5 dono, Pluvius. So, like, I shouldn't have to like really make this obvious, but again, when we're talking about underreporting or not reporting, we're talking about like those police departments not reporting those events as mass shootings, or we're talking about like scientific studies not reporting mass shootings, or we're talking about that. It's not, the headline wasn't specific enough.
Amendment. What I haven't heard is one coherent reason why any civilian in America needs an AR-15 military-style
gang violence is absolutely included in the stats.
assault weapon. Tell me why you need one.
I told you why the general population of America, law-abiding citizens,
why do they need those weapons?
They need them for the prospective possibility of resistance to tyranny, which is not a concern today. It may not be a concern tomorrow.
Where are you expecting the tyranny to come from?
It could come from the United States, because governments have gone tyrannical before.
Do you understand how absurd you sound?
Here's where you go into the absurd and the bullying. You're absurd. You're stupid. I understand that.
I'm not the one that came in here and accused you of standing on the graves of dead children.
Because you're the one who's doing that.
Bullying.
Oh, good times. So when Piers immediately, the debate is pretty much, when he says the little book about the Constitution, that was one of the moments that went absolutely viral, because obviously the sort of scorn that he has for the Constitution itself is pretty obvious in that particular clip. When he says, what is the reason that you need an assault rifle? So the actual answer to that is, I don't have to give you a reason why I need a thing in order for me to have a right to the thing. In other words, I don't have to tell you why I need a bigger house in order for me to have a right to buy a bigger house. But putting that aside, he asked for an actual justification. I give him one, which is,
you're wrong. Why don't you provide me a citation that shows that you are right? How about that one?
The rise of tyranny. And he immediately dismisses that out of hand, which is an amazing thing considering that we fought his actual country using rifles that were in people's homes. The reason the United States currently exists is because of a revolutionary war in which people who are heretofore civilians went to their houses, grabbed their guns, drilled in militias, and then fought the British Army. As far as the idea that tyranny is somehow
yeah, but they grabbed their hunting rifles, man. Like, most people in America aren't buying their guns for hunting purposes.
Possible in the modern world, I think that people are a lot less sanguine about the possibility of tyranny coming from their own government in, say, 2025 than they were when we debated this in 2013, particularly in the aftermath of the COVID regime, in which people were literally locked inside their home for a year. Now, by the time we get to the end of the interview, there really is nothing left for Piers to say. Here was the end of the debate. Piers was very unhappy at the end of this debate.
History is replete with democracies going tyrannical. It happened in France in the 19th century. It happened in Spain in the last century. It happened in Germany. It happened in Italy. It has happened.
It could happen here.
Repeatedly throughout history. It happened in Japan.
The reason we cannot remove AR-15 assault weapons is because the threat of your own government turning on you in a tyrannical way.
It is yes, it is because
that is your position.
It is because there are countervailing rights and responsibilities. And Piers, I don't understand why we can't come to an why can't we come to an agreement about reasonable law? You just want to demagogue the issue.
You have made your point crystal clear. People aren't stupid. They can make up their own minds. Ben Shapiro, thank you.
By the time we got to the end there, he really thought that was sort of, I think, maybe kind of a win, because it was so ridiculous to suggest that you might need weapons to protect yourself against tyranny. That is a long-held American position. It is embedded in the Second Amendment. The truth is that what a debate is really about is not necessarily face-planting anybody. It's about clarifying positions. When people don't actually have in their own mind a clear position on an issue and they go out and debate it, you can expose that pretty quickly. And that's one of the things that happened in the Piers debate. Later on, Piers would actually own his own position. He would just say, listen, I think
yeah, it turns out Ben Shapiro didn't take up arms against this tyrannical government because he thinks it's cool, actually, to be tyrannical if you agree with Ben Shapiro.
It was just ban guns. And that's actually an interesting argument, because you can get to arguments about whether that would reduce crime, whether it's possible, the differences between knife crime and gun crime, the actual causes of crime. Right? That's an actual interesting debate. One of the reasons this debate went so poorly for Piers is not because I was insanely great in this debate, although I think I did a good job, in sort of retrospect. I think the reason is because he took a position that he himself was unable to defend, which was assault weapons bad, handguns okay. And when you have somebody who has not been clear in their own mind on their position, it makes it very difficult for them to defend it. If you watch this, I never become disrespectful. I never yell at Piers.
I don't know, you giggle over the death of children. That's pretty gross.
I never accuse him of being motivated by evil. I don't characterize him. The only thing I say is that the argument that you are making is a bad argument, or an emotionally driven argument, or a bullying argument. This is actually the hallmark of how I do pretty much all of my debates, is that I try to actually listen to the point being made and then respond to the point being made, and then expose any logical flaws in it or emotional appeals that are being made in lieu of logic. Well, folks, that's a wrap on my analysis of the infamous Piers Morgan debate from...
Man, I love that his analysis was that he looked dorky, but otherwise was just an incredible debater. What a shocking turn of events.
2013. As we move forward, I'm excited to announce that we will release more of these videos where I dissect some of my most notable debates.
Okay, so they're really the Daily Wire is really struggling these days. Okay, cool. Yeah. Please do more breakdowns of your famous debate moments. Oh my god. Okay, so just anyone want to take a stab at how many views this video has? Any of you want to take a stab at it? For reference, Ben Shapiro's channel has 7.23 million subscribers. It has 90K views. This video came out 2 days ago. That is a positively tanked video number to have. He has 7 million views, or 7 million subscribers. That's what, like a base activation of like 0.001%? That's crazy. Like for a channel that has like 7.25 million subscribers, that's crazy low. So yeah, they're really they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. Also, just I love that the top result here for comments. I really hope he continues this series for a lot of debates, because it teaches me so much, and it's just like, man, you talk to actual people like this? Why would you do that? Why would you talk to actual people in your actual life like this, you know? They're no longer the hunter. Yeah, it's true. It's true. This was a lot of people's first exposure to Ben Shapiro, and I remember thinking, this guy is like a conservative laser beam.
I am the intellectual equivalent of an assault rifle.
Oh, God. It's crazy. Anyway. Oh, viewstats.com, Ben Shapiro. What are we at? Yeah, I'm not look, I'm not gonna dunk on his views. He gets way more views than I do. I do not have the high ground there, but that particular video, it's funny as fuck. Let's see. Now, the one thing I will say towards the end of this is that when we're taking a look at, like, for example, I do appreciate Savior Hearts bringing up they're not including gang violence. And the reason I asked you to provide citations is because that really depends on who they are. The reason I asked you to provide citations on what you were talking about is because they sometimes do. It depends, because there is no centralized database for mass shootings. Because gun violence in general is reported very sporadically and differently by different police departments, and is tracked differently by different organizations. And there is kind of just a mishmash of different organizations and government agencies that track this stuff, and they have different definitions and different ways they collect data. So when you say they, some of these organizations do include gang violence. Some of them do incorporate that into their data on mass shootings. And so, like, when we're talking about this, you just kind of throwing out like, oh, they don't record violence in inner cities. And like, they do, depending on who they are. You understand now why I was asking you for a citation? You understand why I'm disappointed you didn't come back with a citation for us to talk about this in more depth? Like, I expect better of you if you're in my chat. This is the best we have. Yeah, gunviolencearchive.org I've used before just to get a sense of the data, but like, it's still not great. Still not great. Turns out sometimes they are part of the gun lobby. True. True. They also sometimes don't count rural shootings because Sheriff Jim looks the other way when certain people are victims. Yeah, Sheriff Jim. What an asshole. Yep, the FBI crime stats also rely on self-reporting from police jurisdictions. Hence, how Sheriff Jim throws off everything when he looks the other way. But also, why it's important that other organizations collect this data. But again, they all have different methods. They all have different definitions. Some of them have definitions that align with the federal government, but that federal government definition changes over time. And so older data is weirder in that sense. So again, a lot of organizations do collect data on gang gun violence, but some organizations only focus on gun, like mass shootings that occur by like lone wolves, for example, which is they consider distinct from gang violence, because gang violence is a different kind of violence when they're collating this kind of data, when they're talking about like mass shootings at schools, for example. The term assault rifle is a meaningless buzzword by people. I mean, it's really not. We gave it meaning in like the 90s when we passed an assault weapons ban. But again, that created a definition for these types of weapons. You can say like it's not a good enough definition, and that could very well be true, but like to say it's not a real category, it's just kind of saying the law isn't real. If only we let the CDC look into it, right? Wouldn't that be nice? Got a lot of people in chat with guns who are like, excuse me, I have a gun and I would like to say it is a real category. Anyway, I'm not wading into all that. More people drown in swimming pools every year. Yeah, but there's a big difference between a child drowning in a swimming pool and a child being gunned down by, lone gunmen with an assault rifle. One is that it costs a lot of money to build a swimming pool, and also that swimming is a very normal activity to participate in. And the other is that one guy decides to end the lives of 20 children and can just go do that on a whim. And that wasn't always so, and we could go back to it not being so. It's a choice. I don't really understand how that has anything to do with what you were talking about before, but it seems like you've just kind of moved on to a different talking point because you're upset that you're losing this interaction. As somebody who's familiar with both the Ruger Mini .223 varmint rifle and the AR-15, there's a lot of difference. Yeah, one's for varmints and the other is for large numbers of people. As somebody only familiar with Nerf guns, there's a difference between the big guns and the small guns. Usually the small guns are less fucking powerful, and I'm pretty sure that translates over to real guns. And I do think that does translate. If you think about it in terms of Nerf weaponry, the single 6-shooter, which is a classic design of Nerf gun, only allows you 6 Nerf bullets. Whereas the giant chain gun Nerf gun can shoot hundreds of Nerf rounds. And that can hit a lot more children. It's true. I thought that was a fun little Ben Shapiro section for us to cover. Also, fuck Ben Shapiro. And I hope that he's very unhappy.
No, she's going to prosecute the president of the...
My favorite Ben Shapiro clip. Riverboat
Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the scenes. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.